insists that one of the reasons that they're so afraid of Donald Trump is we can't trust him with the nuclear launch codes. How can you trust Donald Trump with classified government secrets and government information? And I'm thinking, wait a minute here. Number one, does anybody out there think that Donald Trump doesn't right now have access to personal, private, proprietary information? Like, for example, you think there's any chance that Donald Trump would put his personal passwords, his social security number, any of his personal secret information on a private unsecured email server that could be hacked by people? You think there's any chance he would be that reckless? No, of course not. Hillary Clinton has already shown her recklessness in this area. And then, of course, in the last debate, you recall there was Hillary Clinton talking about the number of minutes, the 4 minutes that it takes for nuclear missiles to be launched, to be in the air from the time the president gives the order. And even though an argument can be made that that's information that's publicly accessible anyway, why would you broadcast something like that to 70 million people in America, not to mention how many other tens of millions around the world, including our enemies? It just, if anything else, it seems to me that Hillary Clinton ought to be the one that people are so concerned about trusting with government information. We're going to talk about this now with Bob Maginnis. Of course, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis, retired senior fellow for national security at Family Research Council, joins me now. Colonel Maginnis, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Bob.
Thank you. By the way, I should let everybody know, too, folks, you got to look for Colonel Maginnis's new book. It's called Future War, Super Soldiers, Terminators, Cyberspace, and National Security Strategy for 21st Century Combat. And it's just a phenomenal book. And so, Colonel, what are some of your thoughts about this, though? It seems to me that Hillary Clinton has already proven herself not trustworthy with government information and top secret classified information.
Well, I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest that she isn't. Certainly the email train that has been, of course, examined by the FBI director and announced as, just unacceptable, a tragic situation where she used the information in a public setting or certainly in an unclassified setting that could potentially jeopardize our national interest and put lives at risk. And there's plenty of that out there. Her statement, which I found, rather illuminating on the third debate about the nuclear release time, was frightening. The lady had access as a senator, certainly as the first lady, and then, of course, as a secretary of state, to very, very sensitive information. And she seems to be rather cavalier about how she passes it on to various and sundry people. So, this is something that, in a president, they have to keep a lot of information very close hold, information that even suggests something that about a process, a procedure, should not even be discussed, because as soon as they speak out on an issue, they give it validity, whether it's true or not. So that's a very serious concern that I have, certainly as someone who in the past has been trained on the issues in which she speaks.
Right. Well, and I guess what's so troubling about this is a woman who already spent several years in the United States Senate. This is a woman who already spent 8 years living in the White House with the President of the United States. And this is a woman who already served as United States Secretary of State, having the highest level of classified information available in our government right now. So if you have somebody at that high of a level, and then you think, wait a minute here, why did she use her private unsecured email server? We all know the reason for that, because she wanted to keep other personal things private. She didn't want the government and government records and archives to have access to any private email that she may have, who knows, with information about the Clinton Foundation or whatever. So if she's got her own personal secrets that's so important to her to protect that she's willing to risk national security for the sake of keeping her own personal secrets secret, that tells me that she puts her own personal interests above the national security of the United States. And to me, there's a real danger and threat to national security here. And I don't think that's just hyperbole.
No, it's not hyperbole. Anyone, to include myself, who has access classified information, if we released a fraction of what she had openly stated in her emails, or even some slip of the tongue, in speeches and television interviews, that we'd be in jail. The
Right.
FBI is not going to, turn its back on the release of sensitive information. There was a private or a seaman recently that took 5 photographs inside a nuclear submarine. He
Right.
shouldn't have done that, and they were released. And of course, he was dishonorably discharged and put in jail. And yet, there's no evidence that information was being used by our adversaries, though it would probably be useful to them. But the things that she's released, some of which, of course, have been redacted because they continue to be very sensitive, it was cavalier of her to release that. This has got to be indicative, I think, of a character flaw, a flaw that she's well known for, and one that can jeopardize literal lives, not only of those that are serving overseas, but of those in this country. So, I don't get any joy in talking about this issue, but it is of some grave concern for those of us that have to execute the country's missions.
I know this is very politically biased for me to say this, but I find it really ironic, Colonel, that liberals aren't really offended by the idea of Hillary Clinton operating by a different set of standards and a different set of laws than the rest of us. This seems to be something woven into liberal ideology, that the powerful and the elite have to obey the same rules as everybody else. The concept of the rich being above the law or the powerful being above the law, that seems to violate the core principles of so many liberals in this country. Yet you look at Hillary Clinton, and yeah, it's true. If anybody else mishandled top secret classified information like that, they'd be in jail. If anybody else repeatedly lied to the FBI, they'd be in jail. If anybody else committed perjury before Congress, as she did, they'd be in jail. I mean, to do the kinds of things that she has done, nobody gets away with that kind of stuff. Hillary Clinton has. And then so the Justice Department and the FBI, well, let's just not bring any charges. It just seems to me that ought to be really rubbing liberals in America raw.
Well, it certainly rubs raw the intelligence community,
Yeah.
those that I know personally here in Washington. And, they all just shake their head and say, look, if we were found to even given out a small fraction of what she did, these are not excusable issues. People, their lives are literally turned upside down, and they're flushed because of indiscretions, things that perhaps they did on accident. But what she did was not on accident. She was cavalier and dismissed these things. The only standard she has are double standards, and it's unfortunate, but it's now at the point that if she were to be elected president, I don't have any confidence that she's not going to give away, the crown jewels of this country when she negotiates or when she talks to her political friends on the side. Those are stark concerns that I think every American ought to take to the ballot box.
I can't help but wonder if she did not hold the position of Secretary of State and she were just in a much lower level position in the government, and she did that, I don't see how she would be able to receive any kind of security clearance at all. I'm not even sure she would be able to get a White House tour. I'm not sure what the guideline is, but I've got to imagine that she would be extremely restricted in any kind of access she'd be able to have as a private citizen otherwise. We've got about 20 seconds left. I'll give you the last word.
Well, if you're suspected of doing anything like that, they automatically revoke your security clearance. You can't even go into the office. Where I work is a classified environment. I couldn't even go to my office and do my job if I were to violate, any of these, release of any information, no matter how classified or not classified, even sensitive information that we don't classify by releasing it improperly. So this is just disgraceful, something that no senior official should be allowed to do, and yet she's obviously getting away with a lot.
And being ready to potentially go into the Oval Office and the Situation Room. It's amazing. Folks, it's Family Research Council on the web at frc.org. Senior Fellow for National Security, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Maginnis, retired Colonel. It's always a pleasure.